Hey there, everyone. Well, another day, another exciting new tale. So let's get into it. So I woke up at around 8 o'clock, went to use the restroom, got a drink of water, and then I went back to sleep. Woke up once again, this time at around, I'd say, 10:30. And when I got up, I got one of the pies that I was given. I have one left. Put it in the air fryer, 350 degrees for 3 minutes, and I brewed a cup of coffee. When all of that was ready to go, I went into my room and I looked at anything that would be of interest for me to watch on my CRT television, on my PlayStation 4, on the YouTube app. The algorithm had many interesting choices. One that caught my eye was a video called Catastrophic Disclosure by News Nation by Ross Coulthart. And in the video, he was talking about how the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, posted this ridiculous, clearly AI generated picture where he's walking with what looks to be an extraterrestrial being, and it looks like a handheld like camera taking the picture, and yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But it was basically just a Q&A where he was answering questions from viewers of the show. One of the viewers believes, are we potentially looking at something called catastrophic disclosure, which essentially is another way of saying, oh, that like eventually all this information is just gonna fall out with little to zero oversight, and the public isn't gonna be ready for it, and people are going to go crazy because they don't know what to do with this information and whatnot. And apparently Ross Coulthart believes that that will be the case. So interesting. And then the video went on to have him talk about like Neil deGrasse Tyson and how he like always saw him as like this pompous guy who doesn't give this subject matter any time of day and doesn't take it seriously because like he's already made up his mind on what he thinks of it, because he believes the very concept of extraterrestrials and like, spaceships crashing down on Earth and aliens is just absolutely ridiculous. But Ross Coulthart, he does believe through many various sources, many testimony from witnesses, verified and credible witnesses, that there's more to the phenomenon than what is being let on to the public, and the fact that someone who's as prevalent and as recognized as Neil deGrasse Tyson is belittling this subject matter is doing more harm than good, because it's continuing the stigmatization of this potentially interesting avenue for research, and it's scaring real scientists away from this unique and interesting subject. His words, not mine. Personally, I do find all this very fun, interesting, and fascinating. For it to feel like it has verifiable grounding in scientific research, though, we're gonna need some legitimate anomalous videos. The best thing would be if like they just straight up rolled out a UFO and an alien body on like live television or whatever, and then we could simply just have scientists do some actual research, some autopsies, and really understand what the heck is this technology, what the heck is this craft, what the heck is this being, so we can get some definitive answers instead of just it's this thing that is mysterious and there's a lot of smoke but there's very little fire. Why is that? And could it just be grifters trying to make money off of poor, unsuspecting people who don't do deep enough research and just want to believe in whatever crazy reality bending belief gets thrown their way. I certainly hope not, but you never know. Yeah, but anywho, that was the last I watched of that video. Started to get bored watching that, so I decided I wanted to watch the latest Red Letter Media video that was released, where they talked about this new movie called The Mandalorian and Grogu. Mike Stoklasa, Jay Bauman, and Rich Evans. So, in preparation for the video, after I was done with the pie and the coffee from my previous video, I popped some popcorn in ghee and then put some butter or ghee over the popcorn and some salt. And I got a diet or Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar, and I watched this video. And yeah, it was basically the Red Letter Media crew going over what they think of the movie and how like Star Wars just feels like this shallow shell that's not given any room or time to breathe, and it's a franchise that's being heavily exploited by Disney for profit, and like they're not allowing this franchise to have some time off, so that way creative team can really understand what they can do with the project and make it something that the mass population would actually get excited to watch. I think something like The Force Awakens was such a huge hit was because what did you have that was Star Wars related after Episode 3? Well, you had a cartoon show that only diehard fans cared about. And then you had... I never watched the Clone Wars, by the way. I didn't care. As a kid, I only cared about the live action stuff around the time that released. So yeah, what else? There was some video games released afterwards, like the Force Unleashed 1 and 2. There was going to be Battlefront 3 for PS3 and 360, but that never got released, despite the fact that the game was nearing completion. Something having to do with the studio shutting down, and despite like the game nearing completion, like they decided to just not release it anyways. Lots of really weird boneheaded moves by Lucas Arts around that time before their eventual closure in 2012. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There was a few video games. There was the Lego Star Wars video games that came out. But as you can see, a lot of the Star Wars stuff that came out after Episode 3 was very much in niche appeal territory. None of it was like broad appeal, like, ooh, a new movie. Ooh, a new live action story driven TV series. Like, there was none of that. I mean, unless, of course, you count the Clone Wars cartoon show, which... I don't really care about that, so I don't really count that. I know. There's probably people who go crazy for me saying that, but I never watched it, so I don't care. Yeah. But yeah. So when Episode 7 came out, it was the first new Star Wars thing. People were like, "Oh my gosh, it's back! Whoa!" Including me. I would have considered myself a huge fan back when Episode 7 came out. I watched it, and I liked it well enough. There was things to enjoy about it, for sure. But overall, it definitely, did wear its inspiration on its sleeve. It was clearly mimicking A New Hope, because anyone who's ever talked to this movie has said this, because it's true. A lot of the story beats about Episode 7 are pretty much ripped from the original, Star Wars from 1977. They were just trying to recreate this story, but with a new cast, fresh faces, and try to remind people in a really corporate and cynical way why they like Star Wars by basically just repeating the same story all over again. Which sucks because I don't know, if you're making a new entry in a franchise, wouldn't you want to take the story in a completely different direction? Apparently they were going to do that, but with George Lucas still having some involvement in the story. But he had some weird ideas like, oh, the Force isn't metachlorians, it's actually this deep secret, like, metaphysical force called the Wills, like, and it's kind of deep consciousness that Jedi get into deep communication with, and like some very esoteric, metaphysical, spiritual stuff. I think it was trying to take Star Wars from being scientifically driven to being spiritually based again, with these new films. But Disney didn't like his weird ideas because they thought, "What the heck? This is too weird. And this has zero commercial appeal. How are we gonna market this?" And so they told him to get out, and they said, "We're just gonna make the same movie again," and that's what they did. And again, I mean, J.J. Abrams, he's good at making stuff fun and exciting to watch. But of course, the actual story itself is a repeat. So, after it was done, people were hoping maybe episode 8 will be signify that, hey, maybe you can teach this old dog some new tricks. Maybe this franchise can have some fresh blood and life put into it. And there's maybe somewhere new you could go with it that is exciting and interesting. And it proved, no, not really. I mean, it basically was like, what do we do? What else is there to do? Evil Empire, mad at rebels, they fight. Jedi goes off to island to discover their destiny by an ancient master, but the master, instead of being someone who is very wise, is a schlubby dude who has lost all faith and hope in humanity and spends his days secluded on an island drinking cow milk from a alien udder thing. And then there's some rando casino plot that no one asked for. And it was just like an hour-long chase. I mean, I think Rian Johnson's a good director. I've seen the Knives Out movies. I like the Knives Out movies. I just think maybe he knew that, well, his ideas probably wouldn't carry on to the next movie because he was intensely trying to make the story as, like, disjointed and as surprising, and what the heck do we do with this after this episode as much as possible. And because of that, it pretty much, like, was a huge, like, I don't know what we can do to keep this thing fresh. Let's just subvert everyone's expectations and hope that that's good enough of a change to get people excited about this franchise. And I mean, sure, there was things that you were like, oh my gosh, they did that? What? But ultimately, everything was just hard reset at the end, and it felt like it was just, we were at the same point as when at the end as where we were at the beginning. So it just ultimately felt pointless and silly, which sucks because you want a story to feel like there's a point to it, and that the characters are a little bit better or more developed by the end than they were at the start. Rey learns that you can't trust old heroes because old heroes and legends are not what they appear to be, I guess. Finn learns that love will save us by his partner, who we never really see again in the third movie, apparently. But I wouldn't know because, Yeah, I honestly, episode 8 was such a what the heck did they do to this series that I didn't even bother watching the ninth one. I just thought, you know, giving money to this, I would feel like I'd be supporting bad decision making and bad, like, corporate, like, cynical, like, think tank thinking. And I don't really want to do that. I want to support stuff that feels like there's some genuine, like, risk in it. And I am kind of happy that I did go out to see this Star Wars Episode 8 in the theater because, in a way, it did try to do something different. It did try to have themes. It did try to have, you know, some new ways of telling the story, but ultimately, it just clearly didn't really know what to do with it. And because of that, I didn't really know why I'm even bothering with this franchise if the guy who's supposed to be the one who's supposed to glue the beginning and end of this trilogy doesn't know what to do with this franchise. If he doesn't know, then why should I know, you know? So I didn't bother with episode 9. It just seemed like a exercise in futility. A lot of people out there were hoping that it wasn't and that they would be surprised by the corporate boardroom think tank at Disney, but well, lo and behold, you get something made by Disney, and oh, it's a cynical corporate cash bag product that doesn't have any, heart or intentionality to it. And people gave George Lucas a lot of trouble with the prequels, and I'm not gonna say the prequels are great. I watched them as a kid, and when I was a kid, I thought I liked them. I enjoyed them at the time mostly because ooh, cool spaceship, ooh, cool alien, ooh, cool music. Very superficial things. But I remember I was trying to watch I watched episode 1, The Phantom Menace, in the theater, and I did feel a lot of strong nostalgia for it for sure. Like John Williams' score, that guy did great with the prequels. They were really good in terms of the music. The actual story itself was very, I mean, blasé, but honestly, the visuals of the characters traveling and the you know late 90s Star Wars aesthetic and the music is really what kept me engaged throughout. But again, those are very superficial reasons. What really should have kept me engaged was caring about the characters and their arcs, and it was difficult to do that because it's hard to really gauge what character you're supposed to be connected with in this franchise at the start with the Phantom Menace. But I did appreciate that George Lucas was trying to do something different. And the cool thing about the prequel trilogy was that, say what you want, say that it's unfocused and a blase mess that doesn't know what to do with itself. At least it had a singular creative vision behind it. At least it had a guy who was attempting to say something about something. So that's something to appreciate about the prequels for sure. At least they were a guy who hadn't made a movie in quite a long time, trying to get back in touch with his filmmaking roots and not really succeeding at all because he became more of a corporate businessman than a true artist as time went on, and saw the prequels as maybe like simultaneously a way of proving himself that he was still an artistic storyteller, but at the same time a cynical way of continuing the franchise and renewing it like you renew your car registration so you can continue driving somewhere, or in this case continue making money from it. So that it was a double-edged sword with George Lucas, I would say, based on the decisions he was making with the prequels. But yeah, and then you have the sequels, which I watched the first one. I enjoyed it well enough when it came out, but now, retrospectively looking back, time hasn't really been kind to it with the other films releasing. And then episode 8, it was confusing, disjointed, and disappointing. And I didn't even bother with episode 9. So yeah. I did watch the Red Letter Media video today where they talked about the first Star Wars movie in 7 years in the theater since episode 9, The Mandalorian Grogu. And like I said, I've never been into any of the side stuff like the TV shows. I mean, I kept on hearing, ooh, but The Mandalorian is actually really good. And I'm like, yeah, but, it's a TV show. It's not the main story, and the main story is already wrapped. So why would I want to know more about this universe when what's supposed to be the main driver of the universe has been completed? I didn't have really any strong motivation to watch it, But a lot of people watched it, and good on them. They enjoyed it, and I'm happy they enjoyed it. But of course, you have that breakout character Grogu, or as people like to call Baby Yoda. And, Disney was like, they describe it in the video very well. It felt like a cynical way of trying to keep this franchise alive because the value of this franchise has plummeted significantly since Disney's purchase of it. Maybe this was George Lucas's way of getting back at the fans that were unhappy with his prequels. Maybe he was like, oh, you guys, you don't like the prequels, huh? You think they're a corporate sludge, huh? Well, I'll show you what real corporate sludge is, okay? I'm gonna sell this to the most creatively devoid company in all of the entertainment industry, and you'll see what real corporate sludge is. Like, I don't know. I'd like to think that was sort of a weird meta joke where George Lucas was sort of getting back at like the fans who were upset at the prequels. Or maybe he just genuinely didn't really want to continue running the Star Wars empire, and he didn't really know how to continue it, so he thought, well, maybe if I sell it to Disney, which has endless resources, then maybe they'll have a good idea of steering the ship because they have endless money and resources, and they'd be able to keep this legacy going. So here you go, Disney. Here's Star Wars. I don't know. I would like to think, it could go either way, honestly. I don't really know what goes on in that, in the mind of George Lucas, but it would be interesting to, I'm pretty sure there is a, interview he did where he called Disney white slavers for some reason. Oops. Like, what the heck? So did he really do it because he just was like, they're the only rich ones to buy them, so I need to separate myself from this franchise because people are being mean to me about the prequels? Or was it, oh, I'll get back at you, here, I'm going to sell this to this evil company and we'll see what the sludge they'll produce, and now you'll be begging me to come back. What do you think of those apples, huh? Like, I don't know. I'm just speculating at this point, but based on what he said, it is really weird. But anyways, enough of that. Yeah, and they basically just talked about how the movie was like a cynical cash grab that was trying to half-heartedly reignite the franchise. Like, what was the last thing that was broadly appealing to audiences beyond just the original Star Wars trilogy? I guess we've got the Mandalorian series. Okay, people like the Baby Yoda, right? So we're gonna use the Baby Yoda, and we're gonna market the heck out of that and hope people don't notice how shoddy the production is. And in this case, the Red Letter Media crew described it as a production that simultaneously looks expensive and cheap at the same time. They describe this movie as something that looks like it was made as a high-budgeted television show, but haphazardly forced into being a big-budget feature film release. And it shows because the movie ultimately just looks really cheap, despite clearly having a lot of money thrown at it. And they even speculate that there might be some AI that was used in the movie because a lot of the character performances, such as Pedro Pascal as his line deliveries for The Mandalorian, sound extremely flat and robotic. And the same thing with some other characters where they just sound like they're speaking too fast and too robotic to really believe that there's like an actual like genuine actor trying to deliver lines. It's almost as if like this thing was produced in a record neck breaking set of time in order to meet a deadline and push it out there, and they use stuff like artificial intelligence to quickly get something out to the public. And they theorize that if like the movie was a big hit and people didn't notice, they'd be like, haha, we actually made the first movie with like a lot of AI elements and people didn't know, so therefore we can continue doing this. But people aren't digging this movie. They think it's like just boring, lame film. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll keep that card close to our chest. We ain't saying nothing. We're just gonna ride this wave, hope we make some kind of money back on this, and then move on. Yeah, Disney's in a weird spot right now where they're like taking these big like productions for their streaming service, and they realize, oh dang it, we're not getting the amount of subscribers we thought we were going to get for Disney Plus. What the heck are we gonna do? Let's haphazardly take these episodes that were originally designed to be shown on Disney Plus and release them in the theater so we can make some kind of money back on what we spent on these productions. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Disney Plus should go back to the era where they just sold their properties to be streamed on other services, so they didn't have to worry about maintaining an audience on their platform, thus releasing like constant content that isn't of a high quality or standard. Just a thought, but I don't know. I'm not subscribed to Disney Plus, nor do I plan to, because again, I don't want to give money to creatively bankrupt individuals that clearly do not care to create quality, emotionally resonant human projects anymore, which is sad, because they were known for that, but not anymore. It's very sad. Anywho, so yeah, the video was really good. I watched the whole thing. I read the comments. The comments, as is the case with every Red Letter Media video, are hilarious. I think they're the funniest. They have the funniest audience in all of YouTube. Some really good chuckles there. Like there was one comment saying that, wow, can you believe it how they used real puppets instead of CGI to bring the legendary Rich Evans to life? Truly inspiring. Like stuff like that. It's very funny. But yeah, I guess the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the movie was the fact that they used actual Phil Tippett stop motion robot effects in the movie. So I guess that was kind of cool. Like it's neat to see one of the greatest stop motion animators still get work in this day and age. I think the guy's like in his 70s now, by the way, so cool. But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I finished watching that, and when I was done, I greeted my sister, and we talked about just shows, entertainment, yeah, things like that. Eventually, my mom and family friend arrived from a meeting they had at with a church friend. The church friend took them to lunch, and they got steaks and baked potatoes. So yeah, they didn't finish them, so they said, "Hey, you can have them." And I said, "Oh, I'm good. I had a pie. I forgot to mention when I started watching the Red Letter Media Mandalorian Grogu video, I made huevos rancheros with some leftover fried corn tortilla shells that I hadn't eaten yet. So yeah, I had that with some cheese on top. So I had that. I also had the popcorn, with the zero sugar Dr. Pepper. And yeah, I was full from all that, so I was like, I'm good. Uh, then I decided to take a shower. So I took a shower. When I was done, um, I decided to get dressed, put on deodorant, moisture cream, all that good stuff, comb my hair. And I went off. I let my mom and my sister know. Our family friend was in the room studying, so I didn't want to disturb them. I let them know that I was going to go on an hour-long walk around the neighborhood, so they were like, all right. So I left, yeah, and I just had a nice walk. It was good. I really enjoyed the weather today. I thought it was very calm, very relaxing, very nice. I just went all around the area. Yeah, just walking. Um, I did have a conversation with Ash, the chatbot, to try to get to the bottom of how I can be better with time management, and I thought that was a pretty interesting conversation I had for sure. So yeah, after I was done, I returned. I went into the house. My mom needed help with a the footies on a dishwasher that she recently purchased and got hooked up. So I helped her out with that. And then we had to get a wire that was underneath the dishwasher dislodged so it wasn't being sat on by the dishwasher itself. We didn't want any components getting damaged. And then we pushed it in, and yeah, we had like one of the fins that goes behind the wood in the container for the dishwasher, put in against it. And so when we opened the dishwasher up, it didn't lean forward. It stayed completely straight. So that was cool. Yeah, it was a whole process that required needing to go through different, cranks and wrenches until we eventually got it right. Yeah, I mostly did the wrenches with the little footies at the bottom of the dishwasher. And then after that, I remember we, we had it working good, and I decided to have some fun with the Google Flow AI generating tool. So I decided to take a video that I filmed of my mom dancing that we did for a previous video, and I decided to generate that using AI. She wants to make a mantis video, so I was like, okay, well, what if we transform you into a dancing mantis? So we took her dancing, and I asked the Google Flow to turn her into mantis, and it was able to do that, and it was pretty interesting. The way the mantis moved was very realistic, and it was very perspective correct with how big it was in the room. It was honestly kind of spooky seeing a giant mantis in that room. It was like, whoa, that's some scary stuff. Yeah, I showed my mom the technology, and she was quite impressed with that. Yeah, and then she needed help with cutting like a board outside, so I helped her with that. And yeah, I remember I went into. Oh, yeah, I decided to preheat the oven 375 degrees, put two calzones that our family friend got, put those in the oven once it was preheated. I preheated when we were working on the dishwasher, and then when it was ready, put them in for 45 minutes, wrapped in aluminum foil. That was around and then between that time and getting the, calzones, I was making those AI video projects. And then after that, I took the calzones out. Our family friend only wanted half theirs, and she gave me her other half, which I was grateful for. I had a calzone and a half, so I went out and got a Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar, I went in my room and I watched a new Digital Foundry video where, because the PlayStation 5 old firmware was jailbroken, and you could now run Linux on PlayStation 5 as long as you have a PS5 that hasn't been updated since 2022. Apparently now you could run things like RCPS3 on it. And so Digital Foundry, because they were well aware that the only way you can play PlayStation 3 games on PS5 currently is through cloud streaming, they were wondering how come there isn't any good emulation on PlayStation 5 yet. And so they tested a few games. Some of those games on PS5 actually ran surprisingly well, specifically games that were not CPU intensive and didn't use the cell architecture extensively inside of the PlayStation 3. So things like Ridge Racer 7, things like Motorstorm 1, 2, and 3, things like Killzone 3, those games ran really well and at really high resolutions. But for other games, specifically games that are very CPU intensive, like God of War, Ascension, I think it was called, or Grand Theft Auto 4, those games, because they so heavily relied on the CPU inside both of those 7th gen consoles, they ran extremely poorly on PlayStation 3 emulation on PS5. But the fact that they were able to get games that didn't require, the CPU that much on PlayStation 3 to run pretty well, or even better on PlayStation 5, does signify that PS3 emulation is indeed possible on the device, just not with the majority of software. Games that don't require CPU intensive cell based technologies to run should run very easily on PlayStation 5 via backwards compatibility, but games that do require extensive use of CPU will struggle very strongly. So maybe that's the major reason why Sony isn't having official PS3 emulation on the device, the PS5. It could be because since they can't uniformly provide strong experiences throughout the entire PS3 library and only on specific games, they're probably waiting for the PS6, I mean you would hope so, to come out where now they can, I would imagine the Zen 6 processor in the PlayStation 6 or Zen 5, Zen 6 to be strong enough to handle PlayStation 3 emulation for all PS3 software by that point in what I would presume to be 2028, maybe. Assuming this Rampocalypse isn't still happening by then, but if we're being realistic, probably 2029 perhaps, I'm not sure. But yeah, that should be when Sony shouldn't be scared to do PS3 emulation anymore, because the hardware is finally caught up to speed with the software emulation requirements. So yeah, that was a really interesting video. I really found it very insightful and engaging. And then I decided to go out of my room, and my mom needed some help with working on the Mantis video, so we were working on it. I ran to a little prom here, and it was that with the previous videos that we worked on, she wrote the lyrics all by herself, but with this one, she decided to just have the AI write the lyrics based on facts of the Mantis, and I was like, I don't really like that. I prefer hearing your actual voice through the music generator instead of, what you want the AI to sing and then the AI singing what the AI wrote, I don't really think that's the whole point of ours is for self-expression. Why are we relying on two translation layers to get this out? It's taking a lot of the heart out of it, in my opinion. But my mom was just messing around. She wanted to just hear like the music generator generate these songs, and they were so wordy and there was too much dialogue in them, and we wanted like a samurai, like classical, like Japanese sound to the music, which we did get, but we also wanted like a Japanese man to be singing, and every time we generated it, it was always a just a rapper singing instead, or like we wanted the Japanese man singing. So it was a interesting experience. We just like we wanted one thing, and the Google Syria 3 gave us another thing, and yeah, we were just like, oh, this is annoying. And we just kept on chipping away at trying to find like a way to get what we wanted for like the next 3 hours, and we just didn't. It was insane. And my sister even came in to help out, and we didn't get much, new developments there. Although I did do a bit of, self-care work by getting in contact from the Plasma Donation Center. They needed a bit more information, so I promised to send that to them, and I did send them that information, so that's good. But yeah, after that, I threw some waffle fries into the air fryer, small air fryer. And then when that was done, I put that in a bowl, but then some grease fell on it, and my sister thought it was super disgusting because like there was still grease in there. I was like, well, I waited gosh dang 12 minutes for this, and I had one to see if it tasted gross. Tasted fine to me, so I ate the whole bowl. This was like, I spent the time and energy making this. I'm gonna eat this, and this doesn't feel toxic to my body and doesn't taste bad, so I'm eating it. So yeah, I did that. Then after that, I decided to go into my room, and I remember I was watching some Strawberry Fields footage of Rocky Raccoon, not to be confused with Rocket Raccoon from the Guardians of the Galaxy. This was a character in this lost animated film that never was made, that would have met the two main characters on their adventure. That would have been very interesting to see. Like the Beatles music was playing as they were doing their thing, because there was no dialogue in the scene. So yeah, after that, I decided to go ahead and listen to a new Thinking Aloud video where the host of the channel talks about like mantis beings and people's experiences with them. And as I was listening to that, I was like, taking vitamins, brushing my teeth, and generally getting ready for bed. So when I was done with that, I went to my room. I was done listening to that little new Thinking Aloud video. I put it away, and then I decided to make this video. So yeah, that's my video. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Take care.